Good morning. We should have done this in the coffee shop. I'm not sure who's in charge of logistics, but they managed to get this one a little wrong. But you're probably wishing this is what your flight is going to be like, right? So you can stretch out for however far you're going. Now, I'm out of Australia, so we always wish for a flight like this, right? Because it's no fun sitting next to someone for 14 hours. Anyway, guys, AI-100, designing and implementing an Azure AI solution. My name's Glenn Morris. As you can see, I'm a data scientist out of the east coast of Australia. So I live in a beautiful little place called the Gold Coast. I always describe it as a little Las Vegas by the sea, because we're just essentially theme parks, hotels, and beach. So I chose to live there. So next week when I go to Vegas, it's like going home in the desert kind of thing. No, so I do a couple of things. I obviously work in the data science and AI space. I work for myself. Primarily, I play regional lead for the MCT program. So I look after a bunch of MCTs across Australia, New Zealand, and the APAC region. And then besides that, I work primarily in commercial loans and construction. So I've got a couple of construction companies that I work with that are into predictive analytics. And commercial loans, it's all about, I don't know, fraud, defaulting, those sort of things. So we're always building out algorithms, trying to improve models, trying to build out environments that allow these companies to realistically make more money. Okay? The quicker we can give you a loan, the quicker you have to start repaying us, the quicker you will default, those sort of things. So we can charge you more interest. Yeah, you know how it goes. So it's a particular way of doing business. I have ethical issues with it, but they keep me in food and drink, so I'll keep doing it. So some of the things that we want to try and achieve, just as a starter, has anyone actually given this exam a go? Has anyone tried it yet? You have. How long ago? Okay, so, but did you, when you try to give it a go, when you try to sort of have a go at it, was it sort of a year ago or 6 months ago? 6 months ago, okay, and it changed by then. So I say that because this exam's had a sort of interesting life cycle up to now. When the exam was first published, it was very much a what would you use when exam. And then somebody looked at the exam and went, hold on a second, that's not AI. And so they essentially went in and rewrote the whole thing. And they turned it into an AI exam, but they also turned it into an AI exam on Azure, which is important, right? So they started thinking about AI rather than thinking about the services. And they started thinking about, if you're putting together an AI solution, surely it's not just a case of, choose which service you think would work for a particular need. They started to think about things like, where would the data live? How would the data get to where it lives? Once the data lives somewhere, how do we make sure that it goes into the service that is going to do the voodoo, the magic? And then once it comes out of that service, where does it go? What's the point, basically, of my solution? And how do I put it together? How do I architect it? How do I make it do the things that I intend to do with my AI solution? Essentially, they started to become enterprise about the way we approached AI. Because that initial approach to cognitive services, which was really where they focused, was very much a kind of person using a service, rather than an enterprise using a service. If I use cognitive services, I'm just going to upload my holiday snaps, right? So a couple of 100 pictures. But if company, say for instance, a company I work for like Caterpillar uses cognitive services, now we're talking terabytes of images or terabytes of information that we need to concern ourselves with. So it became a very, very different outlook around the concepts of AI. When they initially permeated Azure, it was very much a, look what we've got, you should try using them. But then it became a case of, look what we've got, enterprises should try using them. And so the focus changed, and as a result, the exam changed, and as a result, we have this really broad exam that touches on a little bit of everything. Now, today's not an exam cram. We would never have enough time, but I'm going to try and sort of approach this in a number of different ways. If we took the approach, we're going to build out an AI solution, what would we do? Okay, so we'll look at it from that perspective as well. Secondly, we have to talk about the topics. We have to sort of talk about the breakdown of questions. We have to talk about study material, links, resources, and so on. So we'll go through all that, and we'll talk about all of that. Firstly, just a little bit of an overview, guys. Now, you can see where this falls, and ultimately, it sits in this sort of strange place where it is the associate capabilities or criteria to try and get you to an expert exam that is not even related to it, right? It seems like a crazy place to sort of put these things. So you can be a certified Azure Solutions Architect expert, completely separate track, but somehow part of this particular process. So I'm not too sure of the thought process here, but I'm sure this is one of those things that will change. We're in this constantly evolving kind of, what do we do next with the exams? Like, I know that there are going to be more exams in this space. I know that there's going to be a pathway into AI. Because what we're discovering is everyone's interested in AI. It's the buzzy thing at the moment. Everyone's interested in machine learning. Everyone's interested in data science. But when you invite people into a room, this is what the room looks like. Because the reality is they will read the exam objectives and their career just ended. Because if you don't know the stuff, it's not something that you read the exam objectives and start work the next day. There's a lot of information that you have to harvest, that you have to ingest, that you have to sort of let go round in your brain for a period of time before you can quickly go and start building out AI solutions. Now, say this every time I present anything data science, anything machine learning, anything artificial intelligence. Do not discount the importance of mathematics. Right? You need to know the basic mathematics required for machine learning and artificial intelligence. You need to read a little bit of stats. You need to understand probabilities. You need to be able to come up with hypotheses, right? The theory of how we do that, how we use populations, how we use samples. Okay. All of these theories need to be in the back of your head. Otherwise, a lot of these concepts in the artificial intelligence world and the machine learning world, you will never grasp, okay? Because you're not understanding the reason you're doing something from the beginning. Okay? It's very easy to say, oh, we can have a regression algorithm that's going to predict something. Let me give you an example of why that is an incorrect way of thinking. If I said that you had an axis that told me, or that had a list of years from, say, 1980 to where we are now, 2020. And then you had an axis that had the weight, average weight of a male since then. Now, we know since 1980 to 2020 that the average weight of a male has pretty much gone up at around 45 degrees-ish. Okay? The average man used to weigh 68 kilograms back then. He weighs almost 90 right now. That then indicates that in the year 2070, he will weigh about 150 kilograms. We know that not to be true. Yeah, we hope it's not going to be true, but we know that not to be true because we'd all be just dropping dead like flies. And as a result, if we just use your average everyday vanilla regression model, that's what it would tell us. So now, how do you make this a more accurate prediction then? And that's where understanding the mathematics, understanding what you're doing becomes important, because otherwise you're just going to follow that line, right? And you're probably going to get into the funeral business as a result. No, I mean, I joke about these things, but the reality is that it's very easy to get this wrong. And the weird thing is it's going to be right for the next 3 months. That's right. So your customer will go, oh yeah, look, it's working as we thought it would. But then it's going to stop working. And you need to be able to determine why it's working now, why it's going to not work next year, how we change it so that it works next year. And a lot of that is theory that sits behind what you're actually doing. So the theory that sits behind the practice. And a lot of that theory is based on mathematics. So it's understanding the theory. You don't have to get into an environment where you're drawing massive symbols and formulas on boards. You don't have to do that. You really just need to understand what it is you're applying. Okay. And then you'll be comfortable. Now, to that end, you'll find this. There's a couple of courses around. There's even a course on EDX called Mathematics for Data Science. Okay? It gives you that initial overview of what you need to know. It doesn't take you into this sort of deep mathematics world. You're not going to crack the Enigma code or anything like this. You're really just going to understand what it is that gets you to where you need to be. The learning path. This sort of breaks down what you need to know in order to take on this exam. Solution requirements, designing AI solutions, implementing and monitoring the AI solution. And that all rolls up into this concept of designing and implementing an Azure AI solution. So guys, one of the first things that you need to be focused on is this particular page. Like I said, this exam's gone through a few updates since it was initially released. Beyond today, this is where you find out that information, right? So if you're about to go and take the exam, a week or two out, you might want to just check that whatever you're studying is still valid, okay? The exam is focusing on this stuff. And the reason I say that is because down here, there's a little link. Now, who's taken an exam before? Now, you guys will remember that they used to have all the objectives on this page. They don't do that anymore. They give you a little link. The link bounces out to a PDF. The PDF has all the exam objectives. What does this mean? It means that when they change something, that it's not a 2 or 3 week process where they have to find the web developer, they have to crack the code, they have to change something on the website, and then finally it's published. Now they have to update in PDF and drop it into SharePoint, and suddenly the exam objectives have changed. Right, so not only do you have to check that page, you have to make sure that you're staying up to speed with these objectives. What it's really done is it's expedited the process of being able to change. Okay, because someone just needs to change a PDF, and as of that point, the exam is different. Yes, sir.
What is the expectation in terms of how often they would be changing it? I mean, this is expedited the ability to do it on the fly, but if they're shifting them every 2 weeks.
Oh no, it's not going to happen like that. What will happen though is one of the things that is really kind of weird about taking exams is the expectation is that you are working in the AI world and that you are working with Azure regularly. And therefore, the expectation is that if you're looking at Azure on a regular basis, you should see the change happening. So that when they come in a week or two later after a change has happened, say for instance they've said, oops, this is now gone generally available, let's get somebody to write some new questions. So someone writes a couple of questions, 2 or 3 weeks later they've gone through the QA process and they're ready to publish those questions. So then they update the objective domains. The expectation is that you are already aware of this because you are working in this stream all the time. Now, I know that's not the case. And I know that in many cases, people are taking the exam and then potentially not looking at Azure for another however long. And then maybe having another go at the exam and then kind of going, when did that happen? Right. What this also emphasizes is that you really have to go beyond the theory as well and practice all of these things. You have to get yourself an Azure trial. You have to use your MSDN or whatever you've got, your company's account, and go in and build out artificial intelligence solutions. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself in that very space where you are depending on the theory. The theory is never going to be enough, and it's also not going to make you aware of what's changing and when it's changing. So guys, the site and this particular document become really important in the context of you guys getting ready for this particular exam. I've lost my slides. There we go. This is just the profile. AI engineers essentially determine requirements for AI solutions. They come up with the appropriate tools. They take the vision, they architect the solution, they come up with all the requirements and needs, they work with the data scientists, they work with the IoT specialists, they work with the AI developers, right, to essentially put an AI solution together. Okay. That could be a variety of things. The reality is, and this is another sort of piece that I see people struggling with, is the concept of what AI actually is. Right? Usually you have a conversation with someone. Now, I go to a lot of companies who are interested in AI. What happens is you walk in the door, you sit down, you start eating their biscuits and drinking their coffee. They'll walk in the door, and the beginning of your AI conversation will be usually autonomous cars. Because that's what most people think AI is. So you're kind of down here, and we've started with sending man to the moon. And then it's a case of bringing them all the way down to ultimately what we believe their solution is going to be, which might simply be, we want to scan some documents and determine something from the information that we're pulling from those documents. That's usually where the conversation should have started. But we usually start right up at the top at autonomous cars. We come all the way back down, and now we're starting to work on AI. Because there's this notion that AI is this big thing in the sky. But we have to get used to the fact that it might just be something as simple as scanning documents and extracting information and using information, right? In an intelligent way, hopefully. The other thing that's important about artificial intelligence is that under the hood, it's machine learning. Okay? It might be deep learning, it might be machine learning on top of machine learning on top of machine learning, but realistically, it's machine learning. And if you look at machine learning, it begins somewhere, usually with data. There's an exploratory process, there's a transformation process, there's a prep process. There's a modeling process, there's a training process, there's an evaluation process, and there's a deployment process. And that's what's happened to this exam. Okay, they've basically gone, AI, cool, we've got some cool tools, but do they understand what's happening underneath those tools? And all of those things are happening underneath these tools, and the expectation is that you're comfortable and aware of all of those things. Some of the basics, guys, if you're going to take this exam, 40 to 60 questions, this number changes, plan for about 3 hours. You actually get 220 minutes because there's a bit at the beginning and a bit at the end where you can comment and stuff like that. You're going to get everything in this particular exam, right? So there's going to be a range of possibilities in terms of what you might have to answer. Questions are pulled from a bank of questions. They're pulled randomly. It's not done in any particular way. It's quite possible you can write the exam today or take the exam today, go back in a couple of weeks and see a completely different exam. Okay. Also, case study, right? So you'll be given a scenario that you're going to have to study and then answer some questions about it. Performance-based labs, okay, are permeating this exam. In other words, you will be asked to actually perform some tasks in a virtual machine within the exam, right? So virtual machine will load up and it'll say on the side, can you create a Q&A maker instance? Can you then add X amount of questions and answers to the Q&A maker? Can you then attach a bot to the Q&A maker? Can you then publish the bot? Can you then embed the bot in your website, in your web app or something like that? Right. So you'll go 4 or 5 tasks that go to something that would be typical in the artificial intelligence world. Objective domains, overviews, functional groups. Guys, the bits you see on the screen are what we call functional groups, and within the functional groups you have your objective domains. Now you can see that the big one is the guy in the middle, 40 to 45%. Design AI solutions. Analyze your requirements, implement your AI workflow. Sort of make up the rest of the exam. Now 40 to 45% does not mean that if there were 100 questions, that 45 of them would be about designing AI solutions. It really just means that it makes up 45% of the exam. It could be 2 questions. Okay, it could be 80, which would mean that some of the questions are worth nothing. Yeah, so be it. Right? It's impossible to tell. So never go in kind of with that notion that I'm comfortable with designing and implementing, so I should be able to get through the exam because there's enough there for me to make the 700. Okay? Because it doesn't work that way. It's all randomized, it's all weighted in particular ways. There's, weirdly enough, some AI running underneath the exam to make sure that you don't just kind of make assumptions like I'm going to be a gun at 2 of the functional groups, therefore I'm going to pass the exam. So guys, when it comes to sort of breaking down the various functional groups and obviously the various objective domains, you can pretty much start to see that it's really starting to say to you, by the way, this is the stuff you're going to have to know, right? Are you able to select a processing architecture for a solution? Now that's very broad, right? That's super broad, like a solution architecture for, a processing architecture for a solution. This could be anything, right? Even if we just approach it from the perspective of, say, like something like Lambda, right, with a hot path and a cold path, it could still be anything. But what it's really going to sort of say to you here, or really query here, is you have data. The data's got to live somewhere, probably storage. Then the data's got to be pushed through whatever you're going to do next. It could be a cognitive service, it could be a machine learning algorithm, it could be a model, it could be whatever. You're then given that type of scenario, that they will then say to you, okay, well, the data that you are going to be using is in this format. It needs to go into, or it's going to be used by a structured NoSQL environment. What type of storage should we put it on? Right? Would you drop that into a blob? Probably not, because it has the word structured in there. So most likely, this will be a table. Why is this going to be a table? Because they expect you to realize that Cosmos DB supports a number of APIs, and one of those APIs is a table API. Cosmos DB is also a NoSQL database. So now you have to put all of those pieces together in order to answer that particular question. Okay. And that's how you have to pretty much approach everything with this particular exam. It's become very, very broad, but it's become very, very broad on the back of your knowledge of Azure. Okay. So there's this expected knowledge of the platform and all the different components of the platform. Okay. So if I was to say to you guys, in order to prepare for some of these initial pieces, right, so recommend cognitive services APIs to meet business requirements, right, select the appropriate AI models and services, the appropriate data processing technologies. In many cases, one of the things that they're going to highlight or query you about is initially data factory, right? So I've created this little guy. And my advice to you, in order to get ready for some of this data moving, data processing, is to become familiar, become comfortable with Azure Data Factory. Okay. Because if you think about it, it uses a concept that they're really promoting in the AI and machine learning world, and that's what they call pipelines. Right. Pipelines are sets of phases that are made up of generally jobs and tasks. And it means that if I went and said, I'd like to create a pipeline, then it would say to me, okay, what are you going to do? And as you can see, as I go through this process of creating a pipeline, it says to me, you're probably going to move and transform data. Now, you don't obviously have to use all of them, guys. You're probably going to move and transform data. Okay. You might run the data through Azure Data Explorer. You might run it through a function, a batch service, Azure Data Lake, Databricks. Okay. Some of these sort of general SSIS packages, stored procedures, lookups, that kind of stuff. So that could go to transformation and cleansing, HD Insight. You might want to iterate through this data a few times. You might want to run it through some sort of machine learning pipeline as well. So immediately, you start to realize that we've been asked a single question about some data movement. We've opened up a single service, and we're suddenly encountering 100 possibilities. See what I mean? This goes to the breadth of this particular exam. Okay. Now you're in this kind of weird place where you have to start building out a pipeline. So one of the cool things, though, guys, about this particular environment is the ability to set up or clone a GitHub repository. Now, there are a whole lot of examples out there for this particular guy. So let me just find them for you. Azure Data Factory samples, I think they're called, from memory. And you'll find that ultimately this goes out to GitHub. Yeah. So what you would do is you would ultimately set up your, well, depending on whether you're going to use V1 or V2. So you will find that with V1, there's lots more samples. Okay. So you would set up your environment. You would then go out to GitHub. You're going to need a GitHub account. And you would basically clone all these samples into your Azure Data Factory. You would then open them up and basically go through them and reverse engineer them. Look at all the possibilities. Look at how data moves, look how data is stored, look at the different types of storage, what it suggests for the different types of storage, importantly. Okay. So when you get something like NoSQL, but structured, you start to, from a mental perspective, you start to understand that the keywords there are NoSQL. Now, the first thing, I really dislike saying NoSQL because it seems to indicate NoSQL, right? But you know that the no part or the NO part stands for not only SQL, right? So that's why I hate saying NoSQL, because it sounds like it's anti-SQL. Nevertheless, those little components will become more and more apparent. So you start thinking that if I see the word structured and I see the word NoSQL, obviously it can't be SQL, but it also can't be a blob, and things like that. So you start to put these things together in your head so that when you do approach the exam and these questions come up, the keywords start to tell you what the potential answers are going to be, rather than just approaching it cold. So that's Azure Data Factory. Let's do, besides, and I just brought that up, guys, because these things take a while to build out, but it's an important component in this very exam. So let's do something else. Let's go and say that we'd like to create Q&A Maker. Now, who's built anything with Q&A Maker? Okay, so a couple of people. So, few things here that we need to do. Q&A. Okay. I'll use this pricing tier will do. I'll use my existing resource group. Oh, seriously? Someone used it? Excellent. Pricing tier, that'll do. Where are we? East US. App name, all good. Website location, we'll put that in East US 2. App insights, we'll just disable that for now, and we'll create Q&A Maker. Now, from an exam perspective, you obviously need to know what Q&A Maker is. You need to know why you have Q&A Maker. And then you kind of need to know what's the difference between Q&A Maker and LUIS, or language understanding, right? Aren't they both there to answer questions? So how do we differentiate one from the other, right? They both essentially become backends to your, whatever your front end is. It's a bot, it's a website, it's whatever. But how do I differentiate whether I use Q&A Maker or LUIS? And that goes to, once again, understanding keywords within the exam. Can I train Q&A Maker dynamically? The answer to that is no. I have to go into Q&A Maker, I have to update it, and then I have to go train. Can I train language understanding dynamically? Yes. So now you start to see some of the fundamental differences. Right. One has the ability to learn in line, the other one doesn't. So immediately you kind of go, okay, I sort of see a potential question in that. Just thinking about these two technologies that both are part of cognitive services, and therefore there's going to be that kind of expectation that when you get cognitive services questions, you can interpret which service to use when as a result of something that pops up in the question. Now, this guy should come to life in a moment. But then it goes to other things, guys. All the other services. So what's the difference between computer vision and custom vision? Right. It's another one. We're in a similar boat here. Both essentially deal with vision. Both will analyze images. So what essentially draws them apart? Okay. Computer vision belongs to Microsoft. Custom vision belongs to you, right? When you use computer vision, you're using Microsoft's machine learning library. When you use custom vision, you are asked to upload your own and create the library that will be used by the service. Okay. So you can kind of see the question there, right? Because a lot of things are going to start with you are trying to determine, I don't know, a warthog from a pig or something like that. Does Microsoft already have that library for you, or are you going to create it for yourself? You've decided to create it for yourself, and you're going to just upload lots of pictures of warthogs and pigs, right? Peppa Pig will have to be in there as well. And as a result, that would be custom vision, because you are customizing everything, whereas if you use the Microsoft existing libraries, the millions of images and billions of images they already have in place, then you're using computer vision. So this guy means we can go to the resource. You'll see immediately, guys, that what we really want to do here is, I'm going to go back over here and go Q&A maker. Oops, I'm typing on the wrong machine. Q&A maker. I've done that loads, actually. .com, I think it is. Are you human? Oh, that's not it. I don't think that's it. .ai. Sorry. That would make sense. Now I can sign in, and hopefully credential persistence will take care of that. And now, as you can see, guys, it starts to immediately unpack. And this is why I try and enforce the idea that you guys should go through this process. Because it's once you start to see the terminology that you start to understand. Here it talks about this idea of a knowledge base. Now, it's very difficult to create a dynamic knowledge base. And that's sort of one of those clues that it's going to be something that you have to sort of put together yourself. Now, the best way to try and create a knowledge base is to find, what's it called? Microsoft Surface Support, I think it is. And we grab that, and we hope that it's no, it's not. Choose a device. Choose an accessory. I just want the Q&A piece. Come on. Let's go somewhere else then. No. That's cool. We can use this, I think. Right, so I'll just grab this URL and hopefully it works for us. And then we can go back to Q&A Maker and we say, I'd like to create a knowledge base. Right. Now you can see right at the beginning, it's going to say to you, connect your Q&A service to your knowledge base. So I need, obviously, to find the correct directory. I'm going to need my subscription name, and then I'm going to obviously find my existing Q&A service. So now I'm tying the web portal to the existing service within Azure, right? So I'm connecting a few pieces together here. Language, it doesn't really matter. And then you can see here, it'll say, we'll just call this guy support. That's the name of my knowledge base. And then it says, you can give me a URL, and I will try and extract the questions and answers from the URL. Okay. Down here it says, when I've got the questions extracted, would you like your question answer environment to be professional, friendly, witty, caring, chatty, enthusiastic. So it's essentially going to build a profile around your environment. So we'll just go with friendly for now, and then we'll try and see if this goes and extracts that information from that web page. Now you can create this all from scratch. You can create it in Word and upload it, things like that. But one of the easiest ways is to just go get some sort of Q&A environment from some sort of website somewhere. And then hopefully it works, and it goes and it scrapes the website, looks for anything that looks like a question and answer, and builds it out for you, right? So in terms of this, the intelligence built into the service is awesome, okay? But this is not an exam questioning the intelligence of the service, it's questioning your intelligence, right? So you need to understand all of these concepts and essentially be able to build them out. So now that we have this guy, you can see that it's gone and extracted the information from the website. But one of the things you're going to find is potentially this information, for instance, what the heck is this stuff here and that, right? So it's going to need a little bit of a cleanup. I'm not going to bother cleaning it up, but ultimately, it's quite likely that you're going to have to go in and clean this up. Once you have the Q&A pairs, you can see that it says save and train. Now this, guys, goes to the concept, one of the theories and concepts behind the scenes. This goes to the idea of machine learning, right? So now I have my data. I've broken it up into my model, for lack of a better terminology, and I have to save and train my model so that the model can be used to answer questions. So I'll save and train it. You'll see that this happens fairly quickly because all it's really doing is taking it and putting it into an environment that can then be reused, okay, in a Q&A type manner. I can then test it. So if I was to go, how can I get the Windows 10 May 2019 update? It should then go and fetch whatever you see in the answer section. Okay. So at this stage, you should be happy with the fact that this all works and that everything is fine, right? So you can then go off and publish it if you want to, right? So now what it does is it publishes it into the repository that was created this time in Azure. Okay. Because this guy, the portal itself, doesn't have storage for my service. Azure has storage for my service. Now, the really cool thing, and one of the more recent sort of updates, I say recent, it's probably been a couple of months, is the fact that you can now just create your bot from this page, right? So now you can kind of go, okay, well, this is going to be my Q&A service for a bot. So why don't I just create the bot? And as you can see, it says, we'll give it a name, we'll find your subscription, we'll put it in the resource group, we'll find a location, we'll have a pricing tier, we'll give the app a name, a language. You can see I'll go and pull the OAuth key, the key from the Q&A service, right? So if I go back to Q&A Maker, this number here should be the same as this one here, right? So it's been clever enough to go and pull everything you need. It's going to set up a plan, it's going to turn on application insights, it's going to put it into the East US, and you can go create. Right? So how easy is that? Now you're going to have a bot that talks to your Q&A service. Once it all happens and once it's all working, that's cool, but you need to then sort of go, okay, well, what happens when I tweak something in Q&A Maker? And start to kind of understand that you're going to have to go back, retrain, republish, right? So start kind of getting into that cycle that we talked about. Normally we have data, normally we have to prep data, explore data, build our model, train our model, that kind of thing. So it follows this kind of machine learning life cycle constantly as you do things. It doesn't matter if it's this guy, it doesn't matter if it's Lewis, it doesn't matter if it's computer vision or any of those guys. Right? So it's really kind of understanding that life cycle and the consistency of it when you're building out environments. So while that's happening, let's build out, or let's, just for the sake of it, go with some language understanding. Okay. Same thing. You can pretty much see all we're trying to do is create a repository initially. So this is Ignite Lewis, and hopefully that resolves. Existing resource group. Authoring location. Right. This is kind of new to the whole Lewis idea. Right, the pricing tier, authoring pricing tier, then runtime location, we'll go to the same place, and pricing tier, okay? Now, one of the things that you can choose here, as you can see, you can say, hold on a second, I'm only gonna author, I'm not actually gonna need a runtime. And you'll see that you've got 3 options across the top where it says create options. So understand what those are, guys. Lewis is an authoring environment where you are going to create what we call intents, right? Remember that for the exam. Then you have to determine what an intent is. So if I say hello, hola, goeiemorgen, hoe is het, whatever, what is my intent there? It's a greeting, right? So the intent is greeting, and all the terms that I've just used are part of that intent. And this is what Lewis does. He determines intent from the information that you give him. And that's the dynamic nature of Lewis. Now, if you think about, I would like to, can I have, you kind of, the intent is probably to ask a question, to buy, to purchase, those sort of things. And that's the idea behind Lewis, is to capture what we believe the user wants to do and then be able to provide them with a solution. Rather than you ask a question, you get an answer, okay, which is Q&A maker. So I'll just kick this off. And then we'll go back to the bot. So once this is running, we can go back to our resource groups. So this is what you guys have to go through as you prepare for all this, but you have to go through all of the options. Now let me just go here to Q&A maker. I want to go back to my knowledge base. Because I just wanted to cut and paste the question because I'm lazy. So let's grab this guy and copy him, and then go back here and find our bot. There's our bot. And now we should be able to, if I can find the test option. They keep moving things around. Can anyone see test in app? Sorry? Oh, I know, but it's usually just here somewhere. This is weird. See, this is what happens. They keep changing things, and now I'm completely thrown, and now you all think I don't know what I'm doing. Quick start, no, for goodness sake. That's not what we want. Oh dear. We do have a bot. I'm just obviously checking, but there should be no reason why we can't. You can test your bot in the framework emulator, blah, 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 but then I have to download the emulator first. I just wanted to test the bot. There used to be a test in line or test in app. Sorry, where?
Go back to the other screen.
Okay, so browse, yep.
And then in test, the second option.
Ah, that's the one. Test online in web chat. Oh, hold on. Oh, about 100. Yeah, that seems to work. Oh, no, it's just taking me out to a docs. Okay, so there's my bot. See, there should be this, test in web chat. It should be in here.
Yeah, so go back to the resource group. And then right above it. By that pop, right above it.
Oh, sorry, yes, you're correct. Yep, I don't know what I'm doing. And now we can type our message here and hit go. And now it should be talking to my Q&A maker service and obviously should give me answers according to my Q&A maker service. But then, guys, you have to think about a couple of other things. What happens if I say, what is today's weather? Okay. So it really just means that somebody's essentially put something into Q&A Maker to deal with anything that is not a question that we have an answer to. Yeah, I know. So the statement they've put in there is not going to be, normally you would put, I'm sorry, but I don't know the answer to that. Please contact support and have a URL or a phone number or something like that. But in this case, same sort of thing. As you can see as well, you can put links and stuff like that into your bot. Makes obviously perfect sense because you might want to send people to websites and so on and so forth. So build this all out, play with it, understand the back and forth process, understand within the bot as well, guys, that they want you to be kind of familiar with what's going on when you put together a bot. Now, as you can pretty much see, right, there's a number of things happening here, right? Obviously, Q&A Maker. Then you'll see that there's also this kind of data factory component behind the scenes. So when you get questions about data processing and data movement, you can kind of see what is responsible for that. Now, it's not like there's going to be an instance of data factory running, but it's using the engine because that's the processing engine. The bot is C#, and then we're obviously using cognitive services, but we're using this kind of idea of Lewis all-in-one. Okay. As you were seeing things being deployed, these were the pieces it was deploying. Then, guys, by the same token, you can see that we should have a Lewis environment as well. So there's my Lewis authoring. Okay. But now this guy as well goes out to, I think it's lewis.ai. And same sort of thing. So now you have to go through this particular process. Okay, and start working with the Lewis environment. Now you'll see that it essentially says, first thing you're going to have to do is go through the process of picking your subscription. So it's this one actually. And then your authoring resource. Okay, so there's only one in my subscription. And at this stage, we should be able to create an app. Let me create an app. Learn more about the complete Ignite 2019 release notes here. Click. There we go. So now it becomes a case of creating what we call an app. So we'll just call this Lewis app, English. It's an authoring. Okay, and there's our prediction resource. And now that we have the app, you can see it tries to walk you through the process. You're going to have to come up with a schema. You're going to have to build your model. You're then going to have to improve your app. So that's the kind of learning component. Okay. Lewis then makes predictions. So it's a dynamic environment as opposed to Q&A Maker, which is more static. Okay. So here, guys, you'd have to go through a very similar process where you essentially go, I'm going to build out intents. I'm going to essentially work out how my intents work, and ultimately build an environment that will dynamically learn as people ask questions. Now, obviously, you have a fair idea right at the beginning what the questions are going to be about. Right? You're not starting at zero. So you're going to say, well, everyone's going to say hello. That's going to be my greeting intent. Then people are going to, since they've called up the weather service, their following up question is probably going to be about the weather. Okay, so I determine an intent. Then I have to deal with things that have got nothing to do with the weather. So I might have a component that looks after that as well. And I slowly build out my app. Then I start to sort of train my app, and I ask my app to essentially to continue to train based on what users are asking. So build that out, guys. You know, just go through the process of saying, okay, I'm going to build out some intents, give them names, so on and so forth. What you will tend to find is there are already pre-built environments that you can use. So for instance, you can use all of these guys and go done, and it sort of builds out the environment for you and allows you to essentially check your environment out. So there's my intents. I know that I think I stopped it midway through building, but anyway. That's my intent. This is the utterance for that intent. Okay. So in many cases, people will say, if the intent is within the calendar to cancel something, they will say, will you cancel it, please? Will you stop finding it? Stop connecting it? Stop checking it? Stop changing it? Quit the change. Please cancel that. Please cancel it. So on and so forth. Okay. So you can slowly see that this process is a little slower, obviously, than Q&A Maker, but it works very differently. Okay. This is a prediction system as opposed to a static Q&A type system. Now, I want to build out a couple of other things, guys, in the last few minutes that we've got. Really just to show you how to try and test a few other things. By that I mean, in this case, we might go to, let's go with computer vision. Right, we'll create one of these. And the idea is computer ignite, Visual Studio, location, East US, pricing tier, and the same resource group, create. The idea is that when you guys prepare for this exam, like I said, I want you guys to get yourselves Azure accounts. I want you to try all of these things out. Have a look at every single one of the cognitive services. Look at Azure Data Factory. Look at things like HD Insight. Look at Databricks. Look at Azure SQL. Look at Data Explorer. Look at Azure Data Factory, so on and so forth. Go through the samples. Theory is not going to get you through the exam. It's not going to get you all the way through the exam. Okay. So this guy is complete. Yeah, once again, guys, you can see that there's a number of options. The best way to sort of get your head around what's going on here is to go out to the console. Now, I'm just going to go to cognitive services because this is the way I test these things when I'm playing with them. Okay. I go to cognitive services. I look for the service that I'm ultimately interested in. So in this case, it's vision. I'll go computer vision. And then I'll try and find, you can see here there's a whole heap of samples, right? So this one analyzes an image. This one is essentially doing OCR on the image. Here we're recognizing brands and celebrities and things like that, right? And then a little bit further down, analyze video and so on. So in many cases, I'll just kind of go, okay, well, why don't I test the process of analyzing an image? So now I've opened up the API portal. Right. And I want to analyze the image. You can see you can do a batch read file, you can get a thumbnail, so on. So lots of different things you can do. Lots of different classes and methods that can be used. But let's go, we want to analyze an image. So now I need an image that I can analyze. So the best way to do that is if you don't have an image readily available, is just right-click on the image, open it up in a tab, and grab the URL. Okay, then go back to your service. Actually, that wasn't a good idea. I'll have to come back there in a second, because what I really need is the key first. Now I'm going to go and say, I set this up in East US. So I'm going to drop my key in there. Actually, I think that's the image rather than the key. Let me go back and grab the key. Whoops. Sorry, that would have been the key. Put that in there. Okay. And now you want to replace this guy with the URL. So let me grab that, Control-C, and drop it in here. And then tell this guy to analyze my image. And as you can see, it analyzes my image for me. Okay. So then use your own images and do the same thing. What you're trying to determine is what the service does. Now, because we're using computer vision, it's being analyzed against Microsoft's library. If we were using custom vision, we would have to create our own library first. So we do have to go out to a portal, much like Lewis, much like Q&A Maker, upload all of our images, hit the train button, it would train, and then we send an image to it, and it says, oh, that's a polar bear, or warthog, or something, right? So that's where these differences come in. Do this for all of the services that you can. Understand the process. Understand one from the other. Understand also, up at the top here, that I can look for particular visual features, right? So I can say, was there a face in the image? So if we run it again, okay, you're going to get different results based on what you're asking the service to do for you. Okay. And now, ultimately, you have to kind of go, okay, hold on a second, that's something else I have to consider when I'm doing this. And then go, I want a description, I want objects, right? Details, so on and so forth. So if I send that again, once again, I get some different information about the image. So it's really starting to understand, what does cognitive services do? When you upload an image, how does it process the image? It processes it according to the questions that you've asked of the image, okay? Which is essentially you setting attributes. So understand that as well. Okay, what have I got? 11 minutes. So that just starts to look at some of these pieces, guys, okay? Which cognitive services would you recommend for which business solution? So we built out Lewis, we built out Q&A Maker, we attached a bot, we looked at some of the other cognitive services. That's the kind of thing that you guys have to go through and then make a use case for the cognitive services. So if you encounter a question like that, you can immediately go, oh, that's custom vision, that's computer vision, that's Lewis, that's sentiment analysis, and so on and so forth. That's how you want to go into this exam, completely across all of this information, right? Azure Data Factory, as I showed you guys, that's usually what is happening under the hood with the processing. Okay? But understand that you can set this all up yourself. Right? We went through some of those options. You can transform data, you can explore data, you can do this to data, you can move data, you can send it to machine learning, take it back, send it somewhere else, so on and so forth. Just to have that in your head. Understand the endpoints and sources and destinations that you can extract from and send to, and that could be your HD Insights, your Azure SQLs, your Databricks. You need to know all of that stuff. So understand all the sources, the destinations. Be very comfortable with the storage and storage options. Okay. Start building up those keywords in your brain. If they ask you questions about NoSQL, it's not going to be SQL. Right? But if they say it's structured, then you know it's going to be Cosmos, but it's going to use the table API probably. Right? So you've got to kind of draw all those permutations of what is used when, with what. Has to be part of how you're set up as well. There's going to be scenarios where none of these is the option, but Logic Apps is. Right? Know what the key vault is for. Understand the concept of setting up a key vault. How do I start? How do I make sure that people who I don't want to get into the key vault don't get into the key vault? Okay, so now we're suddenly introducing Azure Active Directory, role-based access control. But then once they get into the key vault, how do I make sure that they only get the key that they're supposed to get? Okay, so this is like a conditional access policy. You need to understand these hierarchies. Okay, I can put my hand in, but once I have my hand in, I can't take anything out because I don't have an access policy. And it's only when there's an access policy I can go and grab the key and then go off and do something. Now, see this in the context of an Azure Data Factory pipeline that has to go and get information out of a SQL server. I don't want it running in the context of me. So now I have a secret in the key vault. So Azure Data Factory has to reach into the key vault, get the secret, take it to SQL Server and go, I have the keys, can I have the data? And then grab the data, and so on and so forth. So these are just the kind of pipelines that you have to think about when you're putting this all together. The second part, guys, as you can see, looks at the design process. Okay. And this, once again, does similar things to what we've been doing, but talks more about the integration points, the destinations, the sources, the pipeline's ability to go off and integrate with the machine learning model and then bring the information back and then move it to the next stage in the pipeline. Okay. Cognitive services, once again, the bot framework, right? So those two pieces, what I showed you guys is really what this guy's going to ask you about. Can you set up a Q&A maker? Can you stitch together your Q&A maker with a bot? Can you set up Lewis and stitch that together with a bot? Right. There's lots of cool examples around using small Python apps to query some of your cognitive services. Right. So you'll find that as you're getting into this, you'll stumble across more and more examples and more information. You're going to have to get your head around Azure Machine Learning, okay? Because it's changed a little bit. So for instance, there are still questions in the exam around Azure Machine Learning Studio, but it's quite likely they'll disappear very soon. Okay? Because Azure Machine Learning Studio now lives in Azure Machine Learning Service, which is just called Azure Machine Learning now. Right? Service and Studio has been dropped. This is just machine learning. And as a result, it has a visual interface, and the visual interface is what used to be Azure Machine Learning Studio. So it's quite likely on the back of Ignite, even though it's been around for about 2 or 3 weeks already, as soon as it goes in, comes out of preview, these questions are going to change. So if you can take this exam in the next 2 weeks, the answer is Machine Learning Studio. If you're going to take it a month from now, the answer is Azure Machine Learning Visual Interface. right? So that's why you have to stay up to date with this stuff, guys. That's why you have to kind of stay in the stream, okay? Watch the updates. You cannot let go because it'll pass you by in moments if you're not, okay? Lewis, or language understanding, okay? This is there to build predictive natural language understanding into your apps, okay? And your IoT devices, and your bots, and anything that you want to use essentially as your front end. Monitoring, implementation, okay. Same sort of thing, guys. When you're going through this process, if you're constantly working with these guys, you'll tend to find that now that I've essentially sent a couple of requests to this guy, I should, if I go to my metrics, be able to go cognitive services, let's go total calls, and you can see that if I make it, say, the last 30 minutes, okay, you can kind of see the calls that I've made, right? So there's your monitoring. And this is what I mean. When you're playing with the service, click on all the buttons. Go down all the options that you see here in the navigation. Look at properties. Look at the pricing tiers. Set up an alert. Check out the diagnostic settings. Okay. It's really just to give you more and more information and intelligence about the ecosystem generally, but also allowing you to kind of reverse engineer these processes that you're going through without realizing that you're going through them. Because they will query them in the exam. They want you to understand monitoring. And what I just did very quickly is an exam question. Okay, so I know that it's very broad, guys, and it goes to a lot of information, but that is, fortunately or unfortunately, the nature of this exam. Integration. So this goes to things like just being able to build out a bot connected to Q&A Maker, connected to Lewis, understand all those various processing options, understand machine learning, Azure Data Factory, how it connects to all these other things. Understanding the concept of channels, that's really just the ability to drop your bot into Skype or into Teams or into Slack or into Facebook or something. Okay. Knowledge sources, exactly that. Where's your data? Where's your information? Where's your manual? Where's your survey? Where's your Q&A environment? Okay. It's really just essentially what you're seeing here, guys, is the entire ecosystem. Monitoring and logging. I actually, you know what I did to make this screenshot? I sat there hitting enter for half an hour, just so that I could get the monitoring information. This is the kind of work I put into this for you guys. Right? Tedious. Okay, guys, in terms of preparation then, okay, loads of different learning options. I would just say that Microsoft Learn is really useful, but Microsoft Learn will not get you ready for this exam. So there are things online like AI School, okay, a whole heap of free labs. Do them. I think it's called aischool.com or ai.school or something like that. Go to all the events, find out as much information as you can. There is classroom training for this guy. Okay, so there is classroom training for the AI-100 exam. And then obviously on the back of that, you take the exam, you get the certification. Ways you prepare, remember that exam page, remember that objectives document, right? Remember that they can change the document without changing the page now. So you have to go there and visit the page regularly. Microsoft Learn once again, classroom training once again, and practice tests if you can get your hands on some. Okay. There is, after this particular conference, a free certification option, so you'll have to essentially log in with your Ignite ID again, and it'll give you access to another free exam. You guys have to go for it. Right. In terms of taking action, it's late on a Friday. I'm not sure how much action you guys are going to take, but once you get home and you start thinking about this, really plot a course, play with Azure, play with all of the services. It's the only way to learn this stuff. The expectation is that you play with this stuff every day as part of your job role. Okay? You have to start behaving like that. Otherwise, it's just going to be a mystery to you, or remain a mystery to you. Not too many left, guys, in this space. Okay, I don't know how many further sessions there are this afternoon. Okay, but have a look if you want to go to any of these. And then don't forget to evaluate the session, right? Evaluate like there were 1,000 of you. Okay, wouldn't that just blow their minds? They scanned whatever, 20 people, but we got 970 evaluations. How cool would that be? They would wonder about their own artificial intelligence then, right? Cool. Guys, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the day. For those of you that are